What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network, the channel dedicated to providing you with competitive Pokemon TCG content. Today I'm going to be doing something that is going to be a new series for you guys. I'm doing a Lost Thunder re-review, so I'm going to go back and look at my Lost Thunder review, which I started writing on October 10th, 2018, a little more than 2 months ago. So I'm looking at my preliminary thoughts on the Lost Thunder set, and I'm going to be analyzing my initial thoughts to see if I was wrong, if I was right, if I missed something, and where the cards are sitting in competitive viability at the moment, possibly in both standard and expanded format. I'm recording this during a live stream, so if you're here during the stream, thank you very much for tuning in. And let's get into this re-review of Lost Thunder. So like I said, this is, I started this on October 10th, 2018, and you can find this part 1 through part 4 review on flipsidegaming.com. So this is part 1, the Grass and Fire Pokemon. So we're starting off with Tangela. Said it was pre-evolution for a likely useless card, which was correct. I said Tangrowth, Gunbudo Whip, I don't know what it ended up being called. I noted that 160 for a grass and double colorless potentially is kind of nice, but there's attacks that do 160 for less energy, and it also needs to be healed. And I said that that was kind of a weird requirement to get to that higher damage output. Scyther, I noted that it would likely not be used over the old Scyther, but even the old Scyther isn't used, so that was just filler. Pinsir Grip and Squeeze, I said was an interesting attack. For 20 for grass, defending Pokemon can't retreat during your opponent's next turn. If grass weakness, like with a band, for 100 and they can't retreat was ever worthy of anything, but the only thing I can think of is you want to kill Toad EX in Expanded, but this would only two-shot it, so probably not worth it. And that's two-shotting it even with a ban, so just a bad card. Chikorita, I said it was likely an optimal choice because of its 70 HP. I was incorrect there because you want to be using the 60 HP Chikorita if you're running Elm in your deck. So yeah, this is the Chikorita. Oh, okay, I did mention that it may be the optimal choice if you're running Elm. So, and it accelerates an energy for 1 energy, but you're not normally running Chikorita in a grass deck anyway. Bayleaf is the middle stage, and then Meganium, this is something that I definitely want to note here. So, in the translations, this translated version, which is what I was reviewing the card off of, it did not, in the ability, say that the Pokemon you're using early ripening herb on can be used on a Pokemon which just came into play. Now, we see on the English version, the card that's actually printed, it says you can use this on a Pokemon that has only been in play for 1 turn or whatever, which is huge. Like, that's the reason this card is viable. I said it was interesting and different, but unfortunately I believed it was destined for the bulk box. I think if the ability was printed the way it was translated here, then it would be in the bulk box, because it was basically rare candy Meganium and then wait for another turn to rare candy something else. But since you can put something down and immediately use early ripening herb, like without the 1 turn of waiting to evolve, Meganium ended up actually being good, so I was wrong on this one. Spinarak. Its first attack, I said, was thought-provoking. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed and poisoned, and put this Pokemon and all cards attached to it into the Lost Zone. We haven't seen this being used as far as I know. I don't think it's seen any success. Maybe it's been played in some mill decks or stall decks or whatever, but I don't believe it's seen any success. I said I saw a bit of potential, but right now it looks like it's not going to be used. Ariados, if you want to read everything I said about it, like I said, the links to these reviews will be in the description. I said its first attack was interesting and thought it maybe had some potential in expanded format. Hoppip, this is the optimal Hoppip because it's 40 HP as opposed to 30. This one gets knocked out on the bench by a Jet Punch, so don't use that one. I said Skip Bloom was one of the most important parts to the new Lost March archetype, and expanded, it looks like people are using not to. without the jump pluff line. Sometimes, but in standard, you definitely need the jump pluff line. Or at least I think so. So Skip Bloom ended up being pretty popular, and you need it for the Lost March. The standard Lost March variant. Jump Pluff, I said it was sure to see play and is beautifully designed with its pre-evolution Skip Plume, and I'd say that that's pretty accurate. One made top 8 at Roanoke. Few people made it into day 2 with Lost March. Pinecone's filler. Shuckle. I said it has potential, and that it would see a fair amount of play upon release. It did see a fair amount of testing upon release, but I don't think it ever translated into competitive viability. Potentially some Rayquaza GX variants and expanded have used it. In standard alone Executor, but that deck kind of fell on its face. If you're trying Rayquaza in standard, or maybe Zorora, Tapu Koko, Naganadel, but nothing like too crazy has happened because of this card. But it still has potential for sure. Shuckle GX. So I was really excited about Shuckle GX being in a Zoroark control deck, using all this energy removal in combination with its protection pot ability, which prevents all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks of your opponent's Pokemon with 2 or less energy attached. Shuckle GX has seen some play, not wildly successful, but it's been in mill decks with the Celestial Storm Sceptile, or more so stall decks. It was in the Regigigas decks, I believe, the Hoopa Regigigas stall and whatnot. So it's seen some play in some of these stall decks. But I believe it was in a couple Zoroark control decks, but none of the ones that saw like huge success. Heracross, I said powerful friends could possibly be considered as a backup attacker in Rayquaza Vikaray, but Vikaray fell off a bit. It's still seeing play in standard, but I think people are sticking to the old attackers, so Heracross is a no-go. Celebi Prism Star will not see play, correct. Trico, pre-evolution with an all-right attack. Grovyle, I said this ability is awesome and it added consistency to a Sceptile GX deck that had potential, and I think Grovyle is the only reason that Sceptile GX has seen any play. I wrote a lot about Sceptile, so if you don't have enough thoughts on Sceptile, be sure to go read all of this on flipsidegaming.com. But basically, I said I liked all of its attacks, its HP, its retreat costs, everything about it was really great, including the Grovyle that it had before its stage 2. The paragraph on this Sceptile GX ends with, I'm hopeful for the playability of this card, but it is a stage 2 Pokemon, which is always a large hurdle to get over. And so Sceptile GX did see some play in Roanoke, which was standard. Notably, Eric Smith from Rare Candy piloted it, and his infamous deck change during day 1 happened because he handed in a different deck, but so he had to continue with Blacephalon. He ended up making day 2, and he played half of his tournament with Sceptile GX. I believe it saw some play over in Harrogate Regionals this past weekend, but nothing too crazy. Definitely a tier 3-ish card, but it is in the competitive scene, just very low. Wurmple, filler. I called Ninjask filler. I didn't even bother looking at the potential of its ability because I thought it had none, and as we see, nothing has happened with this card. Pre-evolution with a solid attack, Combi. Vespiquen. I noted that the 120 for 1 grass was impressive, but I said the requirement was too steep, and it looks like that was a correct estimation, as this card has seen no competitive success as far as I've heard. Shaman, I said that it was probably not worth the bench spot for healing, but I think that changes next set with Celebi Venusaur Tag Team GX. But as of now, my what I said about Shaman is still correct. Probably not worth that bench spot. Virizion GX. In theory, if a Sceptile GX deck works out, then Virizion would be nice to have as a basic attacker. Double Draw isn't bad, however, it has a mediocre GX attack and low HP, and its potential is rather low, and I'd say that was a correct estimation. Skiddo, filler, Go-Goat, filler, Tapu Bulu. This card's first attack seems okay if your goal is to attach counter energy, then hit for weakness. Heavy Punch does 20 damage for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So with a counter energy, it would do 100. So could knock out a Lycanroc. I don't think this card saw any play in counter energy-esque decks just because of Shaman from Shining Legends, which probably always does this better, just has lower HP. Moltres, filler, 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 filler. Slugma, although this Slugma has 10 more HP, I prefer the old Slugma because of its attack. And I didn't note also that it has 80 HP, not searchable by Elm. The old one has 70 HP, so that one's also not searchable by Elm. So yeah, use the old one because of its better attack. And Cargo GX, I said the deck... Let's see. I think this card will see some play, but I do not think a deck build around it will ever be higher than tier 2.5 or 2. I'd now lower that to I'd be wildly surprised if this thing was even called tier 3. I have seen it being played a bit at League Cups, and I saw it at Roanoke Regionals, but definitely not doing well. It's like a worse Blacephalon. Nothing. By the way, guys, if any of these cards I called filler ended up being good, I will stop and note that. But so far, all of the cards I labeled filler have been filler. Victini. Similar opinion as the Tapu Bulu. I can see a hit for weakness be a one-price attacker, but it's not a very impressive card, and I don't expect it to see any amount of popularity. I believe this has been in a lot of Passimian decks, but Passimian is not very popular, so I don't know if I'd say my statement here was incorrect, but like I said, it's been seen in a lot of Passimian decks. Filler, Blacephalon. I actually didn't write a lot about Blacephalon because I think everything you see about this card on the surface pretty much tells you what the card's going to do. There's not much to look into. I said it was a good card, but I don't think it's impressive on its own, and I still stand by that. It needs cards like Naganadel and Beastring and Heat Factory to actually be a good card. Like, if you were just manually attaching without that energy acceleration and looking at Startlehead, that's not too great. I said I expected to see a lot of play and a lot of success, and I'd say that has happened. Okay, so that is all of the Grass and Fire. Let's go on to the next one, part 2, which is Water, Electric, and Psychic. Alolan Vulpix. This is the suboptimal Alolan Vulpix since we have Beacon. Oops, didn't mean to click that. This is the suboptimal Alolan Vulpix. Slowpoke filler, Slowking. So this actually ended up having some potential, and I didn't note that. So Memory Melt, look at your opponent's hand and put one of their cards into the Lost Zone. This actually had some potential as a control deck, if Zoroark Control wasn't just better. And then Psychic does 60 plus 20 more for each energy attached to your opponent's Pokemon, which could have some viability with counter energy, counter gain against things weak to water, like Blacephalon, but if your opponent knew you were running this, they would just remove all of their energy off of Blacephalon with their Startlehead attack. Laparis has an interesting ability, but there are cards like Oranguru and Zoroark GX that draw the top cards instead of looking at which of them is better. I believe this card saw play, very fringe play in something. I cannot remember what deck it was. It has seen, like, it's been posted in a list from a regional or from a foreign regional or a League Cup or something. So, I didn't actually say that I expected this card to not see play. Has an interesting ability, so I guess the ability is still interesting. Delibird, an interesting attack, but not good enough to be competitively viable. Completely still agree with that. Mantine is filler. This Pokemon has any energy attached to it has no retreat cost. I actually quickly threw Mantine into my Tag Team GX review on the initial 6 Tag Team GX cards. Because if you're using Shining Arceus to power something up, Mantine can be a card on the bench to fulfill that water Pokemon that Shining Arceus needs. Or I'm sorry, Arceus Prism Star needs to excel energy, and you could just put 1 energy if it ever gets stuck to retreat it. Other than that, not a very impressive card still, but has very, very, very small potential. So the filler might have been incorrect to say. Suicune, we've seen this effect on cards in the past that saw play, but they had good attacks, which largely made them playable. I said it was not valuable enough to be included in any deck. I'd say that still stands. Suicune GX, because of its ability, has synergy with Articuno GX. I could see this having potential in expanded, but I do not see a bright future in standard for it. Some people did do well with this deck in a Naganadel Quagsire, Suicune, Lugia GX variant. I believe one of those made day 2 in Roanoke, I want to say. Maybe it was a foreign regional, I'm not sure. But the card has seen some play, but very, very fringe. Probably a tier 3 card on its own, and the decks that it's included in are rogue at best. Filler. White Kyurem. Freezing Flame does 160 for 3 energy. This attack could be really good if accelerating water energy, while also having fire energy in the deck would be possible. And this has been figured out with unit energy, Arceus Prism Star. This deck did fairly well in Japan. It also did well this past weekend in Harrogate. But between those two, there were months in between those two tournaments. This card didn't really see much play in North America. Bad. Primarina. If Primarina GX was viable, this would be viable, but they are not. Nothing here. Filler. Since Lantern's only viable attack is its first one, this card will not see play as Aranguru was always better. Oh, salvage, shuffle 4 item cards from your discard pile. Yeah, if we didn't have Aranguru, maybe that would be an okay attack. Mareep. This will be the optimal Mareep to play in the future because of its ability. Once during your turn, if this is your active Pokemon, you may put your opponent's active Pokemon to sleep. We still haven't gotten Ampharos GX yet, so can't really say anything about this. Filler. Evolving up to a stage 2 to do that split of 50-50 is bad. And its ability is unrealistic. And we've seen no one play this, so I'd say my preliminary estimation of this card's competitive viability was correct. Raikou. I honestly don't see an archetype that could make great use of the card, but the potential of 120 for 2 energy is good enough to not mark this card as filler. So, yeah, Lost Voltage has been being used in Japan, but because of the lightning support in this set combined with the next set, I don't think it's been played in North America, though. After the next set comes out with the new Zapdos and the new Coco Prism Star, this should be seeing play. Pachirisu. Overshort seems like a great attack, but not sure if it's worth a spot in a deck that plays Lightning or Rainbow. We haven't seen it played. So, I guess the answer was not worth a spot. Blitzle's a pre-evolution of a good card, Zebstrika. I'm very happy to have this card in Standard, since Octillery BKT rotated. It's a great non-GX draw support. This card will definitely see play. We saw it played in Connor Finton's expanded Vespiquen deck that got second at Anaheim this past weekend. It's been in some Grand Bull decks to have a non-basic draw engine because the basic Pokemon get shut off by Alolan Muck. I'm sure it's been in some other decks. I think Lost March decks have ran it. So definitely a good card, and it will continue to see more and more play. Stunfisk. I feel like somebody put this card in their deck to do 50 to a Lightning Week Pokemon, but I can't remember. So if somebody did use this, then it's not filler. Dedenne, filler. Tapu Koko, filler. Aurora. The card is incredibly powered and feels very pushed. So I'll just sum up what I was saying here. I was saying it's pushed because it's a combination of a lot of other viable cards. So it has 190 HP, it has a Nitro Tank-esque GX attack, its Plasma Fist does 160, then can't attack, and its ability gives free retreat to everything with lightning. This has been played in Nagana Del Coco's Aurora, which is its own archetype, but that has not seen a lot of success. It's been played as a one-of in Vikaray, which is where I think it's been best at. But I think it's played a lot more in Japan. Like I said, Japan has Pikachu Zekrom Tag Team, Tapu Koko Prism Star, the new Zapdos is really good. So this card will only get better with age. Let's see. I said I believe it would see play regardless of the fighting type prevalence in both standard and expanded. It has seen very little play, but it hasn't been like tier 1 whatsoever. Not two. One of the two Lost March attackers. I expect Lost March to be a tier 2 archetype, huh? I would say it's probably a tier 2 archetype in standard, but you can say that for yourself, what you think about that. That too, an alright psychic type tech, but there are better choices. Yeah, I doubt this will see much play, if any. The thought was you could possibly use this in a Lost March deck, but why would you ever want to use Energy Gain? Espeon. Espeon has 2 solid attacks. This attack can do massive damage in the mid to late game if either yours or your opponent's deck's builds board states with a significant amount of energy. So when I made this review, I misread Energy Crush. I thought it was like Lunala Prism. It's actually, this attack does 20 more damage for each energy attached to your opponent's Pokemon in play. But yet again, this is seeing play in Japan because there's a lot of good Eevee decks out there. So not seeing play right now, but it will see play later on when we get the next set. But this review here was just incorrect because I thought it was the same as Energy Crush on Lunala Prism Star. Unknown damage. I highly doubt there are any realistic combos in Standard, but it is possible with the massive card pool of Expanded. I'm sure we will see players try to make this work in Expanded, but I highly doubt we will see a meta where an instant win condition like this is viable. I think we saw none of this deck make Day 2 at Anaheim, so I would say that that's a pretty valid preliminary estimation here. Unknown Hand. Oh no, I caught Unknown Hand filler. So Unknown Hand actually ended up being really good for stall decks because you can just sit there and draw cards. So I was definitely wrong on this one. Unknown Hand is actually the more viable of the unknowns. Unknown Missing is rightfully filler though. Wobbuffet. This is reminiscent of the Spiritomb that had the ability that prevented Ace-Specs from being played. I could see this being an annoying card to play against for using DNC Prism, but I'd rather just kill the opponent's Prism Pokemon. So this could be used if your opponent relies on Ditto Prism for like an evolution, or like I said, DNC Prism. So I don't think it's seen play yet, but I've heard murmurings of maybe it will be useful eventually. Giraffe Rig, if something like World's Format Zoro Control were to be popularized again, especially in Expanded due to Execute, I could see this as a potential tech. You could use this versus Night March and Expanded, but they would get a KO on the Giraffe Rig you attack. So Giraffe Rig is actually nuts in Expanded. So I'd say I gave it a little not high enough recognition here. I should have definitely said this card's busted. Lost. I think it's called it's Get Lost in North America. That was what they translated it to, though. So yeah, this card's very good. Shedinja is filler. Sableye is filler. Will most likely not see play. Yep. Tina. This card proved its viability in Japan, but we'll have to see if it outclasses the Team DDG influenced Psychic Malamar. So Spread Malamar did not become the move in North America, but Giratina is like a 1 or 2 of in standard Malamar decks. And also notably, it can be used in Expanded Mega Gardevoir, and Expanded Zoroark for more damage, but mostly it's just a good attacker in Malamar. I said Sigilyph didn't have any practical application, especially because of so many decks having non-GX attackers. I believe one of the top 8 or well-placed Zoroark Garbodors from in Anaheim Regionals this past weekend used it, but I still don't think it's very good. Mask is pre-evolution to a card with potential. Excuse me. So I said that Soul Juggling here had potential to be combined with several Tinas, which we just looked at. To continuously discard them for extra damage here. and then re-bench them the following turn, or the following turn to use the ability. And then ideally, at realistic scenario, you would have a Cofagrigus active to attack and discard 3 Giratina from your bench to 100 with Juggling Soul Juggling, and then rebench the Tinas on the following turn. While I think it's a cool concept, I don't think it would consistently output enough damage over the course of an average game. I've seen a lot of people try to do things with this. I think Finnegan Lynch on CutterTap.com posted an article including a deck list for this, but it hasn't ended up being that great. Filler. Nihilego. I think this card will be very good in Buzzgarb Shrine. I still stand with this, but what I didn't mention was Buzzgarb Shrine was going to fall off after this set and not be that great anymore. I still think it's very good in that deck, but that deck just kind of fell off, at least in Standard. Poipole, pre-evolution for Naganadel, which is good because you can see what your prize cards are. Naganadel. I'm super excited to experiment with this card outside of Blissef Naganadel, although I believe that to be where it will find its initial success. So it has found a lot of success in that archetype. It's also good in Rayquaza variants, Turbo Darkrai and expanded variants, Naganadel Quagsire, which is a rogue deck I'm very fond of. Andrew Wambolt has posted some doozies of deck lists on someone's PC with this card, which are absolutely nutty. So yeah, one of the definitely in my top 10, maybe even my top 5 cards from Lost Thunder. So that was the end of part 2 of my set review, and we're going to end part 1 of my re-review here. And definitely check back, if you're watching this on YouTube, check back soon for part 2, which will be the re-review of the second half of the Lost Thunder set review. I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.